Why did you write this letter?
Laura, I can no longer sit in silence and watch the sanctimonious behaviour of those on the Labor side of this, only thinking that this happens in the Liberal Party. There was a clear incident 2 years ago where all of those people who are now coming out and are talking about this as being new to them or something that they didn't know or were aware of that was happening. So in support of all those women who are sitting with stories, all of those women who have stories, I've written this letter to say that this is happening on all sides of the Parliament and it needs to stop.
What is your experience? You talk of slut-shaming and a culture of political cover-up in a boys' club.
I was slut-shamed on the floor of Parliament by a colleague on the other side, and when I took it to my senior Labor minister, shadow minister rather, his response was, don't talk about it, it'll draw more attention to it, and the boys on our side do worse, if not the same thing, and it'll cause a problem for us. So I was then told that my experience was fine, and then I was made to cover up the bad behaviour of what the men on my side of the Parliament were doing and not stand up for myself.
To be very clear, what Brittany Higgins has come forward is allegations of rape. What you describe is something very different. So what exactly are you accusing the Labor Party of?
It doesn't get any worse than what's happened to Brittany Higgins, and I want to make that incredibly clear. What's happened to Brittany is the absolute back end of a system that has gone completely wrong. When people know that there is wrongdoing happening and they sit in silence, they tacitly approve that behaviour to continue. We see young male staffers who want to emulate their bosses. Their bosses are behaving badly. They're entertaining and encouraging this culture of cover-up, of silence and of complicit silence with their approval of this behaviour. And it doesn't get any worse than what's happened to Brittany. My issue was slightly different, but they are inextricably tied together. When we allow women to be treated in this way, whether it is being slut-shamed on the floor of Parliament or slut-shamed by an ex-colleague, an ex-member of staff who was legitimately fired, and everybody shuts up and says nothing, then we tell all those young men who are running around those buildings, drunk on a sense of power that they don't actually hold, that actually that's okay. And it's not okay. What happened to Brittany is the absolute worst that it gets. It is an absolute signal of the toxic behaviour that is allowed to run rampant through that building.
You say that Anthony Albanese said to you that you deserve nothing less than a public apology, but you didn't get it. We have text messages showing that you did plea for him to do that a number of times and you didn't get a response from what I can see. Why do you think you didn't get that public apology?
It no longer suited Anthony Albanese or his political aspirations as the leader to apologise. I recall in 2018 when the stories about me were breaking and Mr Albanese was one of the only colleagues who was out there defending me. And that was because it was to undermine Bill Shorten. So when people talk about, you know, these matters being treated in a political way, there is none more than that. It no longer suited his cause to say to me, oh, I'll do the right thing. He was then the leader. He had absolutely no need. I was disposed of, moved on, buried under the carpet, and away they went.
You refer to a cover-up. What are you talking about?
Well, there's an article that I learned about yesterday. I was yesterday years old when I found out that Mr Albanese had given an interview to The Guardian and he had, in that interview, said that he knew about the allegations that were doing the rounds and the dossier that existed about me, and all of my colleagues were talking about me but not to me, well before it even broke in the media. Now, this was part of a confidential investigation that was conducted at the hands of the Labor Party by their friend, ex-Labor staffer, a staffer who had worked with the perpetrator in my case. So there's the first indication that we've got to cover up. Then those allegations somehow made it from the barrister's office into the hands of the journalist. I didn't put them there. There wasn't supposed to be multiple copies of this. It was meant to be a classified investigation. Nobody asked for an inquiry into how that happened. Nobody asked for an inquiry as to how we got there. And at the end of the day, the Labor Party had no right, legally or otherwise, to conduct that inquiry.
You say in this letter, I will no longer hold secrets and protect those that should have done better. Who are you referring to, and is that a threat?
It's not a threat, but I'm saying that the gag is coming off my mouth and I am happy to talk, and I will keep talking. I will talk about every single one of the behaviours that was, permissed. I will talk about all the slut shaming that happened to me right from the moment that I walked in the door of the Labor Party Sussex Street office in 2014, right through to when my career ended. And every step along the way, I reported those instances of sexual harassment to the General Secretary, to members of the caucus who were quite senior at the time, and at no point was any action taken. And two of those men who were involved in that have actually since been promoted within the Labor Party ranks. Now, if we're not taking the treatment and the poor treatment of women seriously, that we dispose of a woman who had a very promising career, I was very hardworking, in favour of men who are happy to run around, to run their mouths, to slut shame women in a way to keep them quiet and keep them silent, I will not stay quiet on that anymore.
Was it just at the hands of men? I understand a number of women made complaints about you. How do you read that?
I ended up firing a woman from my office during that period because she was also engaging in slut shaming of me, her boss. And, that was one of the added to the tally of staff turnover. It's important that when we are working in an environment like that, people do the right thing and are honest and don't run around on the basis of rumour and salacious gossip. And that place is fuelled by rumour and salacious gossip. The difference is that there are then two sets of standards, as we saw with the Porter and the Tudge case last year, where Tudge was promoted, Porter was allowed to continue to be our highest legal officer in the country, and there was proven wrongdoing. In my case, it was rumour and innuendo, proven to be false by the Whelan inquiry, by the defamation proceedings, and I still was hung out to dry, forced to resign. That was not of my doing. I was forced to resign. The way in which that happened, the circumstances around that are absolutely galling, and I was actually asked at the time to make a statement taking responsibility for the perpetrator in my case's actions.